What's going on, everybody? I forgot that video like kind of aggressively, abruptly ends. That's what happens when you make it yourself. We're joined by Mr. Andrew Laird. How you doing, man?
I'm good. Yeah, I did that once a stream recently where I forgot to like fade it out and all of a
Yeah.
sudden it like ended and I was like, "Oh,
Yeah, we're here.
hey,
We're here and we're
what's
live.
up?"
We get a fun one today. Baseball starts tomorrow. I'll be honest. When I woke up this morning, I thought today was opening day. Like for I would say the first hour of the day, I was like, "Oh, when's the first game start?" It's tomorrow. The first game is tomorrow. That's when
Yeah.
it'll start. But Laird, before we dive into MLB, which is what is going to be the focus of today, I figured we could do like a little So Rare big picture. We can talk about MLB specifically and how maybe some of the things that they're doing right now will impact like the bigger product, or like the entire organization. But first and foremost, look at Mr. Content, solo content king himself. Now, I feel like you're doing more content than I am right now.
You just made it look so easy and I was like, "I can do that." Come on. No.
And you did do it.
It's been like 10 days, if even that many. So I don't let's nobody get used to the amount of content that's coming out of me right now. So
I love it.
um but yeah, started my own. I say started my own. I stole it from Sorare Data with their permission. But yeah, I basically no longer work at Sorare Data for those of you who are watching and don't know. And if you didn't know I worked there, then it doesn't even matter. But yeah, I took over the YouTube channel. I started a Patreon to basically support that channel. There's some extras in there as well. Patreon.com/Andrew M. Laird if anyone wants to join there. But I was getting to the point, and you may have kind of a similar situation with the 75 YouTube channels that you have as well, but particularly like Team Hold as like a community doesn't always want to talk about the stuff that like the channel is built around. Like
Yeah.
sometimes it's more you just want to hang out, in person, in real life, or on the internet with other people who have like a similar
Hmm.
interest, which happens to be whether it's like Top Shot or So Rare or under whatever it is. And sometimes you just want to talk about like how you cut a pineapple. And it felt weird having those conversations as like a face of So Rare Data because
Sure.
So Rare Data is not going to help you cut a pineapple. I can't really help either, but I can show you how
Well,
I did.
definitely not now if you're not there, you know?
Well, oh, that's true. That's true. So the I kind of like looked at this as an opportunity to kind of like lean into what I think more people are interested in talking about. And not to say that people are like bored and don't want to talk about Sora anymore, but I thought that there was an opportunity to kind of provide content for people that was beyond just what Sora and Sora Data was appropriately what they should have appropriately talked about. And not
Yeah.
to say that what we talk about is inappropriate, but it's just not appropriate for Sora Data. And so, yeah, solo.
Right. Well, I know that makes perfect sense. I mean, like when you are underneath a company's umbrella, like you have to line up everything with whatever their vision and brand and like their style of like what would make sense that comes out. And so when you do it on your own, obviously you are responsible for like creating what that looks like. And I totally feel you too. Like we created the channel has morphed a couple of times and now into multiple channels, but like you start with one thing and then you're like, oh man, I would like to talk about this a little bit more too. And so you kind of go through all these different rebrands and it's weird because you need it to be focused, but also broad. like,
Yeah, because
it, good.
like the people who are watching you don't only have like a singular interest in their life that you happen to be talking about.
Right. Right. So, and if we were, we were talking about Top Shot early on when we started, and then we start talking about So Rare, just basketball in general. Like the people that would want to find that content will not know how to find it if it is labeled under a specific thing. So yeah, it is. It's like an interesting, and I'm sure I feel like pretty comfortable with where I'm at right now, and I'm sure a year from now, I'll be like, oh man, we really should be branded in a different way. I think that's just part of it. I think that's just part of the journey. How is it? I mean, I know you said it's only been like 10 days so far. How has it been? Are you still in like the honeymoon? Not that that period will end, but like the honeymoon phase of it, where you're like eating, sleeping it, thinking about it all the time, excited about it, all that stuff.
It it's a really weird, it's a really weird I don't even know how to describe it because there's like an excitement of, oh, I can talk about like this other thing.
Mhm.
and I can really like go deep into that. And the other side is like, oh, I have bills to pay. And so there's like this it's not even like a pull because I'm stubbornly making content that I want to make.
Right.
And I don't know if you watch or listen to Colin and Samir.
Mhm.
Uh, they're like a internet content podcast that they interview a bunch of people. And anyway, they were interviewing the founder of Patreon. This was like a month ago. And obviously what he was talking about, well, the point of his conversation was, I think the title was called like the death of the follower. And it was basically how TikTok and YouTube shorts and Instagram reels are built to like keep you watching these reels and these
Mhm.
videos and stuff like that. And that a lot of content creators make content to get people to watch those videos, but nobody knows like who makes those videos. And even if they subscribe, like you're completely at the mercy of an algorithm. And I'm not good at that stuff.
Yeah.
And it felt like, and they were saying that the biggest difficulty with being a shorts content creator is it's very difficult to like build a community around that.
Right.
And
Right.
ultimately, people who do shorts, like they'll do long form video, and then a certain percentage of the people who watch the shorts will get to the long form. But even then, they're still at the mercy of TikTok being like, oh, wait, here's a video that you would really like.
Yeah.
And the example that he gave was for TikTok, if you are a content creator, you have a really good short, and within that short, you have a good like call to action to like subscribe to something or buy a ticket or whatever it is. And if it was really good, then people are like watching some of your video and being like, oh, I'm going to go buy that. And you leave TikTok and you go to buy that thing. And TikTok's like, oh, everyone's leaving when they watch this video. And so they stop sharing it.
Right.
And it's like, well, that sucks because you just did like a great video that worked. And TikTok's
Yeah.
like, nah, that's not going
No.
to work here.
And I mean, honestly, even on the YouTube side of stuff, like it's just two different audiences. Like if somebody finds you from a short, I think our numbers, it's like crazy where I would say like less than 10% of the people who subscribe to the channel after viewing a short actually tune in to a long form video. Because that's how they consume their content is more like short form related stuff. And
Right.
they'll look at the rest of your reels, like the next YouTube short that pops up, they'll absolutely check out. It's just probably not going to come over for the main show unless it's like something super sticky. But yeah, it's like and however we feel about it now, it could be completely different like 6 months from now too. Like the algorithm's ever changing. But I think like what you said at the top of all of this is like you're just making content that you want to make. That's the only way you can do it, honestly, because if you don't feel that way, especially because like it's not going to be like a massive moneymaker right away, right? So like it has to be the thing that you want to do regardless, and you just keep building off of it. But it's so cool. I've been tuning into a lot of this stuff early on, and I know what would you say your so rare focus is right now? Is it like 90-10 so rare related?
It's probably like, yeah, if not more so rare right now. Like I haven't really branched out. There's another like soccer game that everybody has been trying to get me into that I've talked about called MFL.
Oh, I saw
And
somebody, our guy Matty Harrison, tuned in to that show, and then fired up an MFL account. He was sharing his logo, which looked like the Ohio State Buckeye.
let's go. Let's
Yeah,
go.
yeah, there he
Yeah,
is in the
so
chat right
it's a
now.
new game that is like different than any game I've ever played, not because it's revolutionary, but because I've just never played games like this.
Yeah,
And it's a cool idea and I'm just starting to get into it, but there were like a lot of people from like the So Rare community that play MFL, and when I kind of like casually mentioned I was going to maybe play, they like bombarded me and they're like, "Oh, you
yeah.
got to play." And so I haven't like fully dived in yet, but I'm dived in, whatever.
Divin.
Divin. um, but my guess is I'll start doing some of that kind of content, and that's content that like would be completely inappropriate to do as a So Rare Data channel
Right,
because So Rare
right,
Data has nothing to do with MFL, and so
right.
yeah, that's all it is.
That's fun though. All right, one more like content related thing. What's been like the most annoying thing that you've run into since going solo? Has there been a part of it where you're like, wow, did not expect this?
Not really. I think what was a little weird was So I announced that I was leaving, not like this past Friday, but the Friday before that I was leaving Sorare, and I like opened the Patreon, and I left for the weekend to go to my son's basketball tournament in Rhode Island. And driving up, like my phone kept like buzzing from like people subscribing to the Patreon, and I was like, wow, this is like incredible. And then I came home Sunday, and I was like, I hadn't logged into Patreon to like see how many it was, but I was like, man, this feels like a lot. And like it is a lot. It's also like not even close to enough.
Right.
And, like, which is always going to be the case. And so I was like, I got this inspirational energy to like, oh, I'm going to do all this stuff. And then it's like, man, I've got like a long way to go. And I have to keep telling myself, because I've had other people be like, hey, it's been 4 days, it's been 7 days.
Yeah.
But there is a worry back here that it's like, I'm like, it's been 3 years and I'm making $8 a week.
Yeah.
And
I'm not that you're asking for it, so you can feel free to throw this advice out. One thing that I found very helpful that I didn't do right away is so I would document month to month how things were going, both like not physically, statistically speaking, how is it going? Like how many streams did I do? Blah, blah, blah. But I also started tracking like how I was feeling about it. And because one thing that I found is that it was very cyclical, both with numbers like spiking, but also with like emotionally how I was feeling about it. And one thing that and of course they're tied together because like the dopamine hit of getting either more money or more subscribers, you're like, all right, more of that, more of that. But I think I had thought I understood the cycle of content until I had started documenting it. And one thing I noticed is that every like playoffs, I was like, oh, we're going to ramp up for the playoffs, for the NBA playoffs. I'm sure we'll have a ton of content around that. And it is at the very beginning of the playoffs, numbers are really, really good. But as the playoffs go on, the numbers like trail off. And I think in my head, I was like, that's going to be the opposite because the games get more important, blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
But more fan bases are eliminated. So like if you're either love the game or you love those teams. Otherwise, you might be falling off a little bit. But anyways, I realized that I was putting this like big expectation like emotionally of how I was going to feel about this. Like, oh, the numbers are going to be ramping up. And then I finally was like, hey, just a heads up. We saw the last 2 Junes numbers trailed a little bit and you felt like dog shit. But now you know you have now reset expectations. So I do think it is like good to be like, okay, it looks like every March things pump up a little bit and that's great. Ride the wave. But maybe in April, it's okay. It's okay if it trails off a little bit. It's supposed to.
Did you do that? Did you like record that?
Like in a video?
Like, do you have a video of you going through all of that, or you just did it kind of on your own?
No. I've just been shout out therapy, baby. That was like a therapy recommendation. And it's been like super helpful. I've been doing it for like two or 3 years now, I think. And I found that to be super helpful just because like, again, like right now we're in the middle of like NBA tanking season and I'm struggling because I'm like, I don't want to fucking do it.
Yeah, you don't want to.
I was like Jazz Wizards and like all these games are meaningless. And it's like, okay, this is a normal thing that happens at this like time of year, which is just good. Because especially like when you're a one-man show like you are right now, a lot of it is revolving around how you feel about what you're doing. And so but it's also like an unrealistic expectation that every day is the best day of your life too. So like you need to have the balance,
Yeah, I think I need to do a better job of figuring out what my goals are versus what my expectations should be.
Sure.
And I always kind of try to mix those, and it's not, I don't think that's like the healthiest way to do it. Your example of like looking at the numbers reminded me, like I work out fairly regularly. I would say probably very regularly for most Americans, but like my gym has this like special scale that can like measure your muscle mass and your body, the fat on your body and all that stuff. What's that?
I said a little BMI.
Yeah. Although you'll learn once you get into it, you learn BMI is just bullshit.
BMI is garbage.
Yeah. So I used to take them like once a month. I work with like a personal trainer. And they were like, we'll just track your progress that way. And I remember I would walk into the gym and I'm like, I feel really good. I'm lifting more. I'm not like as exhausted when I do kind of higher intensity stuff. And then I would go on this scale and the scale would be like, you're actually in terrible shape, you fat fuck. Sorry for swearing.
It's okay.
And I
We're
was
past the
like,
5-minute mark.
and it would totally like tank the way I felt, even though I
Yeah.
walked in feeling like good. And they're like, the numbers are like, you don't feel good. And that's how I really need to get that out of my head,
Yeah.
because obviously the people who joined my Patreon earlier, like the people that support the stuff I do the most,
Right.
and like super thankful for everyone who like jumped in on that. But now it's like the hard work of convincing more people to do it.
Yeah, and also I promise, just for people tuning, we will get to
Sorry,
baseball
yeah.
and still rare in general. No, but I think this stuff is fascinating, and
I was
like
gonna
you
say
said,
we should have this conversation over on my channel, because we can do
yeah,
whatever the hell we want over there
yeah.
now.
I also too, I had this conversation with Davis Maddock, who like last year at this time went full time, and that same thing that I told him too. Like the numbers look awesome when you first start, because like you just referenced, and then you're gonna be like, wait, so on at this pace.
Yeah,
By
yeah,
this time next year, and you're like, no, that's not. Don't look at it
yeah,
like
yeah.
that. Don't look at it like that.
You're like,
That's
should I
great.
start my own ESPN show in
Yeah,
December, or should I wait
right,
till January?
right. Well, I'm excited for you, man. I hope everybody goes and checks
Thanks.
out. Go sign up for the Patreon. I'm always excited to just see more people do this stuff, because we need more content, but also it makes me feel less crazy when more people are doing it. So I love that. But
Yeah.
I feel like you are. Rank your so rare sports right now. Are you a football, baseball, basketball in a third place? Is that kind of like where your energy and I would say like money is kind of allocated in so rare?
Um, it's probably that's a really those are two different questions. How
Oh,
into it,
okay.
and where is my money?
Yeah. Okay.
Because
Yeah.
really, money wise, it's all basically zero now. But football is definitely the top. I like started the NBA season like, oh man, I'm gonna like let's go, and I bought a handful of cards, and I literally have gotten to the point where I don't even set my lineups.
Yeah.
Like I was doing just daily, and the gameplay changed to like more in season, which is exactly what they did on the football side. But like
Mhm.
I got it, but I just NBA is the hardest for me time wise. That
Yeah.
it's simple as that. It's the reason I don't play DFS. That all of the late, all the late news that comes in, I just don't see it, and I'm so far behind.
Yeah.
And I would love to be good at it, but I'm just not. So I just bought some, like, I like the Knicks. I went to Villanova. I buy every Villanova player there.
Yeah.
Shout out Cam Whitmore for just lighting my money on fire. But it, so I don't actively play it like I wish I could.
Mm.
MLB, I bought a ton of cards in the first season, and the way that MLB works is exactly why they changed the game. That I have won. I think I've tripled or like quadrupled the number of cards I own from season one, all from rewards.
Oh, wow.
Like I bought, let's call it 100 cards in the first season, and I now have 400, and they're all like, I didn't buy
Well, so
any.
you haven't bought anything since the first season outside of like maybe something here, something there?
I bought literally one card last season for the playoffs because I needed a pitcher, and I started buying cards for this season like last week, and I was like,
Wow.
I started to get into it. I did a show with Kevin Lamponi, who's over at Sorare FP, and you know how it is. Like you talk to somebody who's into it, and you're just like, oh, I want to
Yeah.
get into this too. And so I'm kind of getting into it now.
Yeah, that's what happened to me too. Enough people in the Discord seem to be pretty excited about it. And honestly, hanging out with John at both like in Vegas for the in-season tournament and then also at All-Star Game weekend, like, and I know he works for them, so obviously he's drinking the Kool-Aid, but he is freaking jacked for baseball. And talking to some of the other collectors that were there that also dabble in baseball. And I have found you want to talk about setting expectations for like content. I have found that at this time of the year, I get kind of burnt out just because I've been
Sure.
grinding basketball stuff so hard. And then the basketball player pool, I've got a handle on, right? Because you've got a pretty good idea of the rotation at this time of the year of all 30 teams, right? And then we're at the weird spots. So you got to learn a few more of each guy because they're like weird 10 days are happening. But for baseball, the roster is so much deeper. And so to like try to wrap my head around that has been a little bit tricky. But what I will say, and I'm curious your thoughts again, because you're a little bit more active on the football side. I know there was some pushback on some of the rollout, but I am pretty intrigued by this energy thing as a different way to make your classic cards a little bit more worthwhile. And I don't know how, again, because I feel like your audience is pretty locked into Sorare related stuff. Has there been have you seen like first of all, what was your reaction to it, and what was kind of like the community reaction that you've been seeing?
So I think the rollout was a little weird, because particularly with the way that they phrased how they were doing it. So to give some like context, they had a very similar to football and NBA, where you had, use your in-season cards to win cash, use your classic cards to win in-season cards, and then you can use those to win cash. And it was like very simple. And MLB basically has this, I don't want to say they're blowing that up, but they're basically blowing that up. And there is a humongous emphasis on in season now, which knowing where Sorare has been over the years is not overly surprising, because
they're a business.
They got bills to pay. Yeah. Like they got to sell cards. And people have been talking about how they need a burning mechanism for years. And the big difference is it feels like it's coming, that talk comes a lot more from like the NBA side. And I think it's because people are used to Top Shot where you can burn stuff, and like Sorare's never had it. But there's so many more cards on the football side, like millions of cards.
Right.
And so on the football side, and even in NBA, like the classic competitions are super tough now, because everyone has the cards and they're all like maxed out as much as you can. And so the introduction this year of like the new MLB gameplay, and literally I'm doing a show in 90 minutes or so talking about how it would work for football, but they basically have instituted a fake burn mechanism that is going to, I think, drastically reduce the number of classic cards that you have to compete against. And they're giving us a reason to not sell all these cards for pennies and just keep them, because they actually end up giving you kind of like a reward boost in the game.
Right. That was kind of how I was looking at it too. And I think you're right that maybe the mechanics will look a little bit different from sport to sport. But the thing that we've learned is they use baseball to test stuff out.
Yeah.
And so if there's a positive response to it and they think this actually makes sense moving forward, I'm sure you'll see it roll out on the football side. And then on the NBA side, they've done this a couple of times. But yeah, I do ultimately think that's better. Like I would rather not sell like a card that I got for $85 for $5 just to get the $5 back, and then it make it look like a bad transaction. I'd rather just keep it and then put 200 energy. I don't know how the numbers work, but put whatever energy so I can just use that card. Do you think though that would limit I guess they're probably gonna have to figure out like what the appropriate number of energy is moving forward. That'll be their biggest challenge. Because I was like, do you think that's gonna limit like spending from people? Do you think we'll see less in-season purchases because of it, or do you think like it not like a big enough number that it matters?
Yeah. So I literally didn't answer your last question when I realized I finished. But like, so the way that they phrased the update was, in-season competitions, which they call champion and all-star, require 100% in-season cards, which is different than they've ever done. Like in football, it's a 5-player lineup. You can use one classic card. NBA, they kind of tiered it, but if it like you need, and everyone's like, whoa, they finally did it. Like classic cards are dead. And then like right after they're like, so here's how you use classic cards in in-season competitions. And it's like, don't say it's 100%. And then
I know
they're like, oh.
I'm sure what they were doing is they're like, hey, listen, we would like to build hype for MLB. So over the next 4 weeks, we'll do a little bit of a dump. All right. Well, here's some more information. Here's some more information. They're like, what if we explain the gameplay, but then we'll give them the carrot of classic instead, forgetting that everybody likes to burn everything down immediately. So they were like, how dare you?
How dare you? Yeah. So they've introduced this thing called energy, which is something that you win using your classic cards. So they have two classic competition. They have one classic competition where you can enter 2 lineups. Every lineup in that competition, regardless of where you finish, wins a certain amount of energy. I feel so dumb having this. Like it feels very gamey, but like it.
Well, I mean, the fact that I was reading the blogs and it's energy, essence, and XP, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's You go to anyone on the street and you use those three phrases, and nobody's like, "Yeah, that's fantasy baseball." Sure, of course. But anyway, so you use this energy on a card each game week to use it in an in-season lineup. So you basically energize a classic card to use it in an in-season lineup. And the sort of benefit is that if you have enough energy, you could use all classic cards in in-season competitions.
Right.
Now, I don't think anybody's going to have enough energy to always do that.
Right.
But the cool thing is that so you can have up to 3 in-season lineups in each competition. You can only have 2 classic competitions, but the minimum energy that you win in classic, like you could finish dead last and you win enough energy to energize a card for the in-season the next game week. So theoretically, if you just keep churning your classic competitions, like you'll always be able to use at least one classic card in the next one.
Yeah. I think that's so smart. Again, I just think that it's not like solving marketplace issues or anything like that, but at least it doesn't like screw over the people that had a big gallery. Like it encourages you to even like the in-season cards this year, if you are like splurging a little bit, you're like, well, at least if I'm dropping crazy money on Ohtani at the beginning of the season, yes, I have him for this whole season, but at least I'm not screwed next year. Like I'll still be able to use the Ohtani as long as I'm scooping up energy throughout the year.
Yeah, it feels like a nice it feels like a nice kind of compromise, because I've definitely said like on multiple shows that if they get to a point where classic cards like can't be used ever in season, like the user base is just gonna be like, all right, cool, we're out.
Right. Right. You can't feel like because I like the amount of pressure you feel, because I feel this with the NBA a little bit, right? Where if I make a big purchase and I don't win in the first couple of weeks, especially if we're like around Christmas time or whatever, I know the value of the card is just going to continue to come down. Right. And rightfully so, but that's just like how the game works. So it's like, holy crap, I need to go out there and win something right away, or this is just a huge L. And now it's like, all right, I have a little bit more of a lifespan on whatever purchase I make, because I'll be able to use this card a little bit longer.
Absolutely. And that's really all we want. We just want to feel like this thing that we bought has a little bit of value for as long as possible.
Yeah, and the game is fun. Like I enjoy making the lineups. I enjoy talking about it, and I'm okay if I lose money slowly over time. I just don't want to lose the money immediately.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
I want a small bleed out. I don't want a gash. All right, cool. I was excited to talk about that because again, I've been just wrapping my head around baseball as I emerge from my basketball. Hibernation's not the right word, but like
that's tough timing for you. It really is.
Yeah, I love consuming content. I'm a huge podcast person. I would listen to anything, especially because living in the city, doing a lot of like walking the dog or whatever. It's nice to have something. I can't listen to another basketball podcast. I tried to listen to baseball. I can't do it right now. I'm listening to like only true crime and like Amy Poehler's podcast. I need like a full palate cleanse.
Well, yeah, exactly.
But I am starting to get a little bit excited about it. I can feel my baseball brain moving a little bit, where I'm starting to be like, well, it is March and the weather's shit in the Northeast in March, so we should probably be targeting hitters out west early on. So I can feel the wheels turn a little bit. I guess we should address one thing that happened over this week, because I know they're doing like this triple play thing, which I believe you can still do up until tomorrow, where if you buy something, you also get some energy, some boosty boosts. You also might get Brian Reynolds. That's what I got. I got a Brian Reynolds card. I thought that was pretty cool. A guy I knew. But they did have a little issue. I forget how they rectified it. I know we were joking about it this morning, but they had an issue where they told you, what was the official thing? I want to make sure I get this.
I believe
right.
They said that you had a 10% chance of winning another card, or they were going to reward 10%, like however many cards they sold, 10% of them would come with a bonus card. And they announced today that they came up short of the 10%. And as a way to apologize, they're giving out essence based on how many cards you bought, and you use that essence to like get another card. And based on the chat here, maybe that wasn't the greatest way to do it, but I'm not sure how else they would do it. because I don't think they really want to give away, like directly give away cards. So
Right.
giving away essence is a way for them to like try to make up for it.
Yeah. I'm gonna go glass half full and say that they had a couple of pretty good announcements in a row that we were due for a bad one. You know, we
That's
were due.
helpful.
Yeah, we
All
were
right.
due. We were due for one that we're like, oh, guys, come on, so rare.
Now,
And
th- I don't know if anybody was tracking it. Like there were enough people who were complaining about it, who were like, I bought 90 cards and I've gotten 0 extra ones. But I don't, if nobody was tracking it, like I want to, here's another glass half full. Let's give them credit for being transparent about it and being like, we messed up. Here's our way of trying to fix it.
yeah,
But maybe somebody caught them and I'm giving them way too much credit.
yeah. I only just got in the Discord like last or a few days ago. I see Taylor in the chat. He was the one that shared the invite for me. So I didn't read the fine print and was like, whoa, look, Brian Reynolds. So maybe I'm the wrong person to weigh in on it because I actually got a card.
You just run hot.
Yeah, we ran hot. We ran hot. Sean was saying, yeah, I ran hot because my NBA's been running so cold lately. I see Sean. Yeah, we were talking about that earlier in the show, Sean, where I think they definitely test out. Oh, I wouldn't say they test out bad ideas. They test out their ideas. Some of them good, some of them bad.
Yeah.
But how have you been? Like, you mentioned that you have your gallery's gone from basically 100 to 400, roughly, whatever the official numbers are. Are you like approaching this season with the new mechanics? Are you like, oh, I should probably dink around in the marketplace a little bit, or are you kind of staying the path that you've used like the past couple of seasons?
So there's the past couple of seasons has been a total like whatever is slightly above 0 effort on your scale, like that's what I do. And I mostly like use the Sorare data lineup builder, which doesn't exist anymore, which also makes it much more difficult for me because I'm not a passionate baseball watcher. I used to be, and baseball, like the more football, soccer I watch, like the less base. There's just not enough time, and so
kind of got to pick.
The way that I pretty much have always played Sorare MLB is similar to how I would do DFS, where I stack a lot, and it's like if you got there's correlation there, and I'm not here to say like that's the optimal way to go. It's probably the optimal way to play for those who are lazy like I am. And so you just pick like a couple good teams. They don't even have to be good teams, to be honest. Like baseball is so variant that you can buy whatever team someday it's going to, they'll win a series and it'll work out. And so I've actually like won my way into a couple stacks, and even those like didn't get me to buy more, because the biggest fault of the MLB game, which is probably the reason why everyone likes it so much, is like after season 1, I literally didn't have to buy cards anymore.
Right.
And I kept winning. And I've only sold 1 reward ever. And it was I won Alec Bohm from the Phillies. I sold it to a friend of mine who's a Phillies fan. He needed it for the playoffs or something. And he's like, would you sell this card? And I was like, sure, why not? And then I needed it later. And I was like, literally, I was like, oh my, literally the one card.
I'm never selling again.
Yeah.
So, but do you think with the new mechanics this year, that'll change things a little bit? Or do you plan on just kind of like with the energy, just trying to utilize the gallery you already have?
So I mostly played limited and rare for classic for years. And I like the new in-season classic split. And so I was like, I'm going to try to play in-season limited this year.
Yep.
And I thought about buying a few stacks, and I was like, the more stacks I buy, this is going to require work each week. I'm going to figure out like who has the best matchup.
Yeah.
And the other option is like, oh, just go out and buy the best players. And I didn't really want to spend for Ohtani and Judge. And so I was like, I'll buy a couple good players and like try to like, I want to say like, I'll try to moneyball my way, but I'm not even doing that. It's a terrible process that I have here. Of like, I have a few guys I like, I have a couple Phillies that I stacked, and like opening days tomorrow, I'm going to set my lineup sometime today or tomorrow and just be like, all right, like what's it look like? And I can't, until I actually start using energy on cards, like I really have no concept of how viable that is. And so My guess is I'll play classic rare because I'm not buying new rares, in-season
Right.
rares, but I'm going to play in-season limited. I might have 2 teams, and hopefully I just win it. I come in first place in week 1 and we're set.
And then you're set. You're good to go. I do
Yeah.
think too, like and this was kind of similar with the NBA, right? Where if you like for the MVP, right, you like buy an MVP essentially. If you like have an Otani from last season or a Judge from last season, I do think that makes sense. Where you're like, okay, that's where I'll use my energy on this. This is like where I will try, so I don't have to go out and spend like the big money for like the big bat or the big pitcher, and then I can fill in around that with some of the in-season cards. You were talking about stacking. I mean, like, listen, I know I only come from like the FanDuel DraftKings like school of thought. I do still think like stacking makes a ton of sense. Like, I think it's so hard to decide like which guy is going to hit solo home runs this game week. I would much rather be like, man, I think the Royals are in a good spot and they should score 15 runs at least once in this next 3 this homestand or whatever. So I'm just gonna load up a bunch of Royals. But I think that's kind of how I'm going to approach it, is just like picking off teams one at a time for those, like the top part of the order, even some of the bottom part of the order at times too. But like
baseball stacking, sorry to cut you off there.
No, go ahead.
Baseball stacking is like the most obvious like correlation in sports.
Yeah.
Like you can make the whole like quarterback, wide receiver, like that's fine. Yes, that would make sense too. But you're just like, oh, why did you play 4 guys from the same team? And it's like, because if they're all on base, the last guy that's got a home run, they all get points.
Like with the Red Sox, if Devers goes for 25 points in a game, Dern probably goes for at least 10, even on a bad game. Like he probably gets on once, steals a base, and then gets knocked in on one of the Devers plays. So like I would much rather just kind of do that instead of like picking one. Just like the one-offs, I think, are a lot trickier. Not that you can't do it. I'm not saying you can't do that, but I think for me, and maybe that just comes from a lazy perspective, but I do. I like the stacking.
There were guys that I talked to last year that like it feels like the alternative to stacking is buying like Judge, Ellie De La Cruz, Otani, and you're just like, well, all right. I mean, I guess I could do that too if I want to spend $1,000 on 6 cards, but I'd rather buy some other ones.
I enjoy like the sweat of stacking a little bit more too. Like I enjoy that quite a bit.
And from like the viewing perspective, like if you have 2 guys in your lineup who are on base and the guy up at bat is also on your team, you're just like, here we go. Let's watch some baseball.
Do you have any, like, so outside of stacking, is there any other sort of like game theory you kind of bring to baseball? Since I'm talking to a man who has quadrupled his collection in rewards since starting on the Sorare MLB, or are you just really like, this is a stack I'm running out and here's who I've got that pitches this week?
I mean, in Sorare MLB, because it's cumulative points, it's not best score like NBA. So like, teams that play 4 games in a week are usually better than teams that are 3. Although the way I look at it, like baseball is a math game. Like it's a lot of counting and a lot of formulas and a lot of numbers, and that will tell you if a player is good or not.
Right.
And you will almost never convince me that a guy who's playing 3 games is better than a guy who plays 4.
Right.
Like, so
yeah, I'm trying to think.
Like, high level laziness is how I
was trying to think of what the examples would be where you would do that. You would play somebody that, I guess, like 3 games in Colorado versus 4 games in Miami. Maybe
it's stuff like that, and pitching matchups. Like if it's 4 games against the top of the rotation versus 3 games against the bottom, and it's like you can MLB and like fantasy baseball as a whole, like you can go down endless rabbit holes to like justify any decision that you make.
Yeah.
And what I really like about Sorare MLB, and I've said for years, I think the Sorare MLB product is the best one of the 3. Like I don't spend nearly as much time on it because I don't follow baseball enough, but it's the best product, which is funny because they're like, oh, that's where all the bad ideas are. But like some great, like the gameplay is really good. And a lot of the stuff that they introduced for this season, which I think are going to be relevant for the other sports, I think are good ideas. And like I said, the more you put into it, it feels like you can benefit, but also like you can luck box a bunch of stuff like me.
Yeah. uh, I've heard that from a lot of people though. That even like people who are bigger NBA fans or bigger football fans have said that the they've enjoyed the Sorare MLB experience the best and have had like the most success over there. And I don't know, maybe uh if it's just easy to get, not gamify, but I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't say there's less variance in baseball compared to NBA. I don't know. I don't know why you'd be much more successful at one versus the other. Sorry, did you have a thought on that? I saw you starting to go.
Well, it's just like the variance. It feels like the variance works out in your favor more often in baseball.
Yeah.
That's all.
And
Like you could,
and there's something to be said for like the consistency of it all, right? Where like in NBA, if Giannis puts up 65 and then 220s, like whatever, you're still taking the 65 that game week
right.
versus that would actually hurt you quite a bit if
Mhm.
Judge goes for 28. Well, I also again, if I'm saying 28, like that's a good score, I have no idea. But if he goes for
28's good.
28
Yeah.
on Monday, but then goes 0-0-0,
Yeah.
that would suck the rest of the week. So and with baseball being so boom or bust too, in a lot of like it's not uncommon to go 1 for 4 a couple of games in a row. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I have like talked myself into it, and I am a Massachusetts native. I love the Boston, or I used to love the Boston Red Sox, and I now have a real hatred towards them because they traded Mookie Betts, and I'll never forgive them for that. And but I did just go out and buy all of the limited Red Sox, and I'm like an anti vaults collector, like XP boost because I own everybody on the team. I hate that bullshit. I shouldn't be rewarded because I went and bought one guy that played for the Denver Nuggets for 10 days in 2012. Like I shouldn't get extra points for that. But I did go buy all of the Boston Red Sox today. Actually, I did that.
Do you know that you need to buy at least one other player?
Yeah, like I can't just roll out all Bo Sox boys. Yeah, no, I did. Listen, I did fantasy sleepers, Laird. All right, because if you're gonna be a fantasy baseball guy, you got to do a video on sleepers. And I think I did buy all of the sleepers that I mentioned in there.
Oh, there
Which
we go.
I'll be honest, man, I will say I knew 8 of the 10. I think Garrett Mitchell I had never heard of before doing some research into outfielder for the Brewers.
I was gonna say, when he played for the Clippers, I'd be like, all right, yeah.
Yeah, I never heard of Garrett Mitchell, but he made the sleeper list. All right, after doing some reading, he made the sleeper list.
There we
So,
go.
I'm trying to think if there's any other big picture baseball stuff. So the season tips off tomorrow. Tips off.
Tips off.
What do we say? We're on the mound. The wind up. The wind up is tomorrow.
First pitch.
Um, yeah, first pitch. That's a better way to do it. And I think the first game is 3 p.m. Eastern. Does that sound right? Let's see. Because I think I'm just going to put this out here right now for you content freaks. I'm not going to do a live before lock every game week, I don't think, because it just doesn't have the same like chaos of
Mhm.
NBA, right? But I do think tomorrow we'll do something. I think at 2 o'clock, maybe. I got to double check when the 89 Cavs is going on, but we'll do something like an hour before, and I'll build my lineups, and we can we'll look at Kevin Roth and the weather for this coming game week. That's the only thing I can bring: weather takes and ballpark takes. That's all I've got. That's
Love
all
it.
I've got for baseball. Anything else like baseball related you're looking forward to for the
Should
so
should
go
we
ahead.
talk about the vaults and ceiling and
Oh, yes. And if I will turn the keys or give you the keys because
yeah.
that's the one blog I didn't read today.
So the most important blog that they had.
Great.
So there's basically two things that they introduced that I think changed a lot for people. And one of them is called vaults. The verb they use is sealing a card in a vault, which whatever.
Yeah.
But they have a cool like case now that your cards show up in. It looks very cool. I'm gonna have to. It literally looks like this. Hold on. Like it's like a hard plastic case.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Looks like
All right.
that.
I like
Shout
that.
out Hank Aaron. Anyway,
Shout out, Hank.
so you seal a number of cards. The most cards you can seal is 400. That's for I don't think it's all scarcities, but I know it's 400 for limited. The more cards you seal, and they have like different thresholds, the more reward boost you get. So it's not actually a boost on a card, like they don't get as higher score, but they
Okay.
will actually be a multiple of the reward that you win. So you'll win like more cash, more essence. They
Whoa.
say more cards, but it's just more essence
Right.
and more XP.
Interesting. And that is now by vaulting something, is that like you can't sell it for a year?
So you, um, it's 7 days. It
Seven.
takes, so
Oh,
like unvaulted. Yeah. So it's like, it's not really a burn mechanism. So like I vaulted or sealed like a Garrett Cole card, and like Garrett Cole's not going to play this season, but like next season I can just unseal it and I'm good to go.
okay. So I'm sorry. I must have I missed the. So a vault, like if you seal it, it's for a full year,
You can
or
seal, so you can seal it for however long you want. Once you
okay.
unseal it, meaning you take it out of your vault, the verb seal is so unnecessary because
Yes.
you're
Okay.
literally like putting it in a vault.
Okay.
But you're only allowed to unseal one card per day.
Okay.
So
Okay.
like
All
you don't
right.
want to like seal all of these cards that you will eventually use. But um once it's
I
sealed,
got you. Okay. You know what?
after 7 days you can unseal it.
And you can't play the card if it's sealed.
Can't play it, can't
Okay.
trade it, can't sell it.
Okay, so my thought, I immediately was thinking of it as like NBA Top Shot, where you like locked a card or whatever, and that you still had like access to it. You just couldn't list it on the marketplace. So that's what I thought it was. So this kind of replaces training a little bit, right? Where,
Well,
um,
they don't
right.
gain anything from it. Like
Oh,
they can't gain. There's no XP from it. But you basically, you're essentially, I don't want to say you're burning it because like you can
right.
unburn it, but the idea is you lock it into a vault and you never see it again. And you do this because at certain levels, it's like, oh, you get a 6% boost on your reward. And so the more cards you seal in a vault, the higher your rewards can be.
All right, two things. One, I do like the concept of this. I think this is good. So I want to say that before I make fun of it. I do think this is good. I like the idea that your rewards get better. I like it probably limits how many times a card is listed on the marketplace, right? So that's good for the overall value of the cards. That is, I feel like I need to have a person next to me to explain it to me at all times. That's the only thing. I need like a like a vaulting for like I'm not going to use the word seal. We're just going to call it vaulting. I need like
Thank you.
vaulting for dummies. Like I need a book.
It the UI is very easy. Like they tell you like what happens, but the idea is basically you're locking a card away,
Okay.
and every card that you lock up to 400 for limited, and it's 250 for rare. So like if you lock 400 limited cards, meaning you own 400 cards and you
Hmm.
put them in your vault, theoretically to not use again, you get a 15% reward boost.
On that while those are vaulted.
In every, so like if you had a 15% reward boost on limited because you vaulted locked 400 cards, every reward you win for the whole season is boosted by 15%.
Man, so this is actually I feel like this props up the floor of those dog shit guys. That's what this really does, right? Where it's almost like trade tickets to make it like NBA Top Shot, where you're like the floor ends up being $3 instead of $1 because you have the value of the tickets, which could turn into something else. So, like by having an oversized gallery of even guys that, like you mentioned, Garrett Cole, who's not going to pitch for a while, or guys who are on the 90-day IR or
Yep.
IL, whatever we call it. You're like, okay, let me go scoop this for $1.45 just so I can throw it into the vault.
Right. So there's that.
Yeah.
That's what you do with all your crappy cards.
Okay. I love that.
They also introduced a player loyalty level thing.
Okay.
So it works the same way. You basically vault a card. But let's say you have a Mookie Betts limited card from every season.
Get well soon, Mookie.
Yes. I have a Mookie Betts story, not about Mookie Betts specifically, but a Mookie Betts story for
About the virus?
for another day. No. So, so if let's say you have the first 3 seasons of Mookie Betts limited card,
Okay.
and you buy an in-season Mookie Betts,
Okay.
and you put your 3 previous Mookie Betts cards in the vault, so you can't use them, but you've locked them away. Every lineup that your new in-season Mookie Betts card is in gets a 5% bonus, and that meaning the reward bonus. So if you win
Whoa.
$100, you win 105. That works for every card in the lineup. And it's a 7-player lineup. So you can get a 35% boost, reward boost, if all of your cards are like max loyal player loyalty locked.
All right. So are there any downsides to this? Because I will say right now, this seems like a really good way to make you feel like if your gallery is big, you can still get some utility. We'll use that word, some utility for it. It also is probably good for marketplace health. Not that it means that stuff won't get listed, but less stuff probably gets listed, and it gives us maybe, I'm going to use the word artificial, but I don't mean it negative, maybe a little bit of an artificial floor, but maybe it's not artificial if that's what it's going for, because you can use the other cards. Is there any sort of downside to this though right now? Because this, I will say, and again, I'm just comprehending the old vault for the first time. This feels like, just outside of the word seal, very positive.
Yeah. I think it's a really good idea. My pushback on like burning for years was always that people were like, let me just burn these really crappy cards and Sorare will give me cash, or they'll give me like whatever. And it never made sense from like Sorare's perspective to basically like, they're almost like buying our cards back from us. And like, they're not going to do that.
Right.
But like this one, what I think is actually what I like about this is that it's a reward boost. It's not like if you have 3 Mookie Betts, now your in-season Mookie Betts is at 30% XP and I'll never be able to beat it. But instead, our cards are actually similar now. But if you win, you get $130 and I get $100.
Yeah. That, and to Borland's point, a rare Borland W in the chat. Shout out Aaron. He said also nice that, because a common complaint is like, oh, great, I won Tariq Skubal for like the 5th time or whatever, which honestly you wouldn't be too mad about.
Yeah, that would be sweet. Yeah.
But now it does. There is like an answer to the duplicate rewards a little bit.
So there is, but you only get a benefit from one per season. So like if you won in multiple seasons, like, so I won Christian Yelich 2 years ago, last year, and then I crafted one this year.
Oh, wow.
And so if I lock the other 2,
Yelich boost,
I'll get a boost. I don't remember what 2 is 1.5%. So instead of winning $100, I win 101.50.
Hey, listen, you do that a bunch of times though.
But that's the idea, is that, so the way they presented it, which is kind of astonishing when you hear it this way, if you had a 7-player lineup that included all players that had the maximum player loyalty, which is 5% per card, and you have a maxed out vault, you're literally getting a 50% reward boost.
Yeah. Also, player loyalty sounds like their promise ring.
I'm cool calling it a Sorare promise ring from now on if we get rid of stealing.
Yeah, let's trademark that and make merch. I'm always just looking, and not to be negative, but I'm always trying to be like, okay, usually when mechanics like this are introduced, there's kind of like, yes, hopefully it is good for the manager, but a lot of the times this is like better for the company than it is the manager. And then in previous experiences, both with Sorare and other companies, sometimes people roll things out without having thought through some of the things that we could poke holes in. This seems pretty good, man. This seems, I'm not seeing a lot of like huge red flags. Like, oh man,
John and Damian like runs product for Sorare MLB and NBA. They did a stream with the guys over at Sorare FP, and Damian was like, we have to figure out a way to take classic cards out of the game. Like, he was very open about it. And he's like, there's just so many classic cards. We can only reward so many cards every season.
Right.
What's the best way to do it? And this is what they came up with. And I think it's really positive. Like, the people who don't like this are the people who are like, let me use my classic cards to win 10 grand every week. And it's like,
right. That's
not happening. Get over it.
But this
Please
is right.
stop.
Like, this is like, hey, we want you to play in season We want you to play in season because that's how our company survives. You buying new stuff. Like, that's the only way it's going to
Yeah.
work. It's the professional Ponzi. It's not really a Ponzi, but you know what I mean? Like, you got to
Yeah.
continue to buy. And so instead of just like screwing you over, we're saying we have given you good cash prizes. Like, here are the cash prizes week to week. And if your classic cards are going to help you win more of the cash if you win. You
Mhm.
still have to win, which was the case anyways. Like, you still have to put
Yeah.
together a good lineup. But yeah, this seems pretty good. This has got me a little excited. And honestly, like, this I think would make a ton of sense in the NBA because the classic competitions early on, I think people were like, "Oh, this is cool. Like, we could win stuff. We can win." But it's like so competitive.
Yeah.
And I think I mean, even me personally, who has a decent rare gallery, kind of stopped filling him in, like stopped doing the lineups because I was just tired with it.
Yep.
Um, and I know there's probably a lot we didn't really touch upon the dailies or like the common stuff. I know they've got like some mixed contests too, I think, right? Like if you're still working your way in.
Yeah.
Um,
So the two competitions they have for cash are champion and all star. It's not just cash, but
mhm.
champion and all star are them. And all star, you can play the scarcity down. So like in limited, you can play 3 commons. In rare, you can play 3 limiteds, and so it kind of like
Yeah.
works that way.
And people have been clamoring for that in NBA too, like
Yep.
having some there's going to be like a reason for us to slowly move up, you know?
Right.
Like, and right now that doesn't exist, at least on the NBA side. So it looks like that's going to be an answer to that too. Um, All right, I want to be conscious of time. We only have a couple minutes, so what I'll do is give you a big question, and you can try to answer in a couple minutes. I was just curious because I know you've done like a state of the so rare state of so rare before. Where are you like? And you can answer it from personal, like personally where you're at, or like based on community reactions through like your stream and stuff. Where would you say like is health the right word? The vibe. Let's do vibe. Let's do vibe instead
Are
of
the
health.
vibes?
Like, yeah, how are we feeling? Because again, I'm pretty much head in the sand with basketball, and we're at the time of the year where it starts to fall off, anyways, just naturally.
Mhm.
But it seems this is the least amount of complaints in a full season I've heard in like since I've started doing so rare content. But I'm curious, you have a broader scope of it. How like the vibes have been.
I think I see it much more on the football side because I kind of focus there. So
Yeah.
maybe I don't know if it applies as much to the other sports, but I think they they made like a very big change when they started doing this like in season and classic thing.
Hmm.
And a lot of the older users, meaning users who had been around a while, not like literally old, although they
Right.
probably are old too. But they got really pissed because they had all of these cards and they were like, "Oh, I can't win all this cash anymore." And we saw like a very negative feeling in the community basically like last August
Hmm.
ish. Maybe not as much that late, but anyway. And it feels like there's been almost like a turnover of users, that there are a lot more newer users who came in and they were like, I actually really like this idea of like, oh, I'll use my cards for one season to win as much cash. And then, oh, yeah, I can use these classic cards. And now that it feels like we have more people who are more recent joiners who saw the game as it is today and are like, that's what I want to play, as opposed to people who were like, I want to just keep milking all this money from So Rare and
Right.
are upset. And so it feels like it's more positive. And I think there are more people who understand that So Rare make changes to the game to make it more attractive to play for newer users and so they don't go out of business.
Right.
And
Both good things.
yeah, right. And so there was a time where I think the initial response to all the changes was like, oh, this is just So Rare trying to make more money. And it was like, the more you looked into it, you were like, I think it's actually so they stay in business.
Yeah.
And there are thousands of people all over the world who love this product in all of the sports. And I think more and more people are kind of understanding like, oh, I would like this to stick around. And so they understand better when they're like, yeah, we need to, we'd like you to play these in season competitions. And fewer people are like, no, that's bullshit. I don't want to do that. And they're like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
And yes, I will play because the game's really fun. The communities that pop up are entertaining and I have a good time doing this. So I will keep playing.
Yeah. I'm like talking mostly NBA and MLB. And so most of my interaction has been with John and Damien, but they seem to specifically the difference between last season and this season, both in NBA and baseball, that they just have been listening, it seems like,
Mhm.
and they've been listening. And then that doesn't mean they have an answer to every complaint that comes up. And again, I'm not just trying to give them a big group hug and saying that they're batting 1,000 here. There we go. Another baseball reference. But it seems like they are like hearing people and then trying to come up with creative solutions to make adjustments that is not going to tank their bottom line, but is
Yep.
also going to make it a more just enjoyable like gameplay. And that's why again, you were explaining the vaulting stuff and I was getting ready. I was like, I'll find some ways to poke some holes in this bad boy. I've been around the block with NBA Top Shot. I'll find a way.
And
And I did it.
it's like you haven't read the blog, and all I did was explain it. I'm sure you will find something,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, that's true.
at least like first, once you get over to the absurdity of like ceiling and vaulting and player like when Essence came out, I did a whole stream and I'm like, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. And it was not. By the end of the show, like the idea was great, and I was like, "It's this essence word that is just to this day bothers me."
Essence is a word that you feel like you're supposed to whisper. That's the problem. It feels like it's from a shampoo commercial where some woman who's like 28 is just going essence. that's my problem with it. Because you're right. The concept is great. I've enjoyed, even though the boxes are really worth shit most of the time. I'm like, hey, cool. That's 3 more capsules. I got 3 more capsules, baby.
Right.
Andrew, dude, I appreciate you coming on, man. We hadn't done this in a while, and I don't think I realized that until we started talking. So this has been nice, man.
No, absolutely. And now we're gonna have to have like a content creator chat over on my channel, since we can, there are no rules over there. So
no, I would love to. I would love to do that. And as we get deeper into baseball, our guy George St. Ledger was like, "Hey, you're having a baseball chat with Laird?" And I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "We should do some baseball chats every once in a while, the 3 of us." And I was like, "All right, so yeah, maybe we'll get the 3 of us together here in a little bit." But yeah, if you check the pin chat, everybody, and if you're checking in later, you'll see it in the show notes. Go check out Laird's YouTube channel. And I was gonna say new YouTube channel, Laird, and I gotta tell you, I didn't know it was a switchover. And I was like, holy shit, you got all of these subs already. I was like, this is nuts. And I was so excited I'm still very excited for you.
Yeah,
but I thought you did that in like 48 hours. And I was like, oh my God.
I wish.
No, but that's great. That's even better, man. You get to start that far along. And then I'll have a link to the Patreon too. So go check that out. Anything else? You got to stream in an hour, right?
Yeah. So I'm streaming in an hour to talk about vaulting and ceiling and all of that as it relates to the football product. And I worked really hard on the thumbnail for that one. So
listen, I almost DM'd you about it because you have mentioned, and maybe you still did it, but you mentioned, and I don't want to blow up your spot, that you use, a little AI or a little chat GPT to get those thumbnails cooking.
Yeah, I do.
This one didn't look like that. This one looked, I'm telling you, it was a good thumbnail. I enjoyed it. I was like, it's great. That was great. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to be doing, jumping on the Badge Bros channel, which I think I'm going to simulcast, but now I'm kind of lazy. I don't know if I'm going to. But I'm going to be over there just talking some Underdog daily NBA stuff, even though I can't play Underdog in the state of New York right now. But go check that out. But go watch Laird's show first. People are giving you some fire emojis for the thumbnail. We love to see it. Everybody else, enjoy the rest of the day. We'll see, I don't know, the next time, tomorrow for baseball stuff. We'll see you tomorrow for baseball stuff. We're out of here.